Most people think the most expensive Rolex automatically makes you the most serious watch collector. Most people are wrong. The difference between a $5,000 Rolex and a $500,000 Rolex has almost nothing to do with how good a watch it is. It has everything to do with understanding what you are actually paying for at each level. These are the 7 levels of Rolex watches. By the end of this, you will know exactly where to spend your money and where you are just paying for a green box and a name you already recognize. Level 1. The entry point. This is where most first-time Rolex buyers land, and it is also where most of the confusion starts. The Oyster Perpetual is the purest Rolex that exists. No date window, no bezel complications, no extra features, just a clean dial, an oyster case, and a self-winding movement that Rolex has been refining for nearly a century. It starts around $5,000 at retail, which means it sits on the shelf collecting dust at authorized dealers because nobody thinks it is exciting enough to buy. That is their mistake. Here is what most people get wrong about the Oyster Perpetual. It is not the entry Rolex because it is somehow lesser. It is the entry Rolex because it is the most distilled version of what Rolex actually is. The case finishing, the bracelet quality, the movement reliability, all of that is identical to what you find in watches that cost 3 times as much. What you are not paying for is complication. You are not paying for ceramic bezels or Cyclops lenses or GMT hands. You are paying for the watch, nothing more. And for a first-time buyer, that clarity is actually an advantage. The other thing people overlook at level 1 is availability. Oyster Perpetuals sit in cases. You can walk into a dealer tomorrow and buy one. That is not true of almost anything else on this list. The best value at level 1 is the 41mm Oyster Perpetual with a colored dial. Rolex introduced candy-colored options a few years ago, and people dismissed them as too casual. Those same people are now hunting them on the secondary market at markups that would embarrass a sports watch. Buy the watch. People underestimate. That is almost always the right move. Level 2. The everyday icons. This is where 90% of Rolex wearers live, and there is nothing wrong with that. The Datejust is the best-selling luxury watch in human history, and it earned that title. First introduced in 1945, it was the first waterproof, self-winding wristwatch to display the date through a window on the dial. That combination sounds obvious now, but in 1945 it was revolutionary. Expect to pay $7,000 to $10,000, depending on case size, bracelet choice, and dial configuration. The options are almost endless, which is part of the appeal and part of the problem. Here is what the marketing will not tell you about the Datejust. The customization that makes it appealing also makes it easy to buy the wrong one. Rolex offers the Datejust in dozens of dial and bracelet combinations, and not all of them hold value equally. A two-tone Datejust on a Jubilee bracelet with a fluted bezel and a white dial is a classic. It will always be a classic. A tricolor dial on an Oyster bracelet with a smooth bezel is a moment in time. It felt right when you bought it and looks dated 5 years later. The Datejust rewards restraint. The classics became classics for a reason. Stick to the combinations that have existed for decades, and you are unlikely to regret it. The Air King also lives at level 2. Rolex created it to honor Royal Air Force pilots during World War II, and it has gone through more redesigns than any other model in the lineup. The current version is polarizing. Some people love the aviation-inspired dial. Others find it cluttered. What nobody debates is the value. It comes in around $6,000, uses the same caliber movement as the Submariner, and never has a wait list. If you want a sports-adjacent Rolex without the scarcity theater, the Air King is the honest answer. Level 3. The icons everyone actually wants. This is where Rolex stops being a watch company and becomes a cultural institution. The Submariner, the Explorer, The Sea Dweller. These are the watches that built the mythology. The Submariner debuted in 1953 as a professional diving instrument, waterproof to 100 meters at a time when that was genuinely unprecedented. Jacques Cousteau wore one. Sean Connery wore one as James Bond. It spent 70 years becoming the default answer to the question of what a serious watch looks like. You are spending $8,000 to $12,000 at retail. On the secondary market, add 20 to 40% depending on the reference and whether it has a date window. Here is the thing about the Submariner that collectors never say out loud. It is not the most interesting Rolex. It is the most legible Rolex. Everything about that watch, the Mercedes hands, the maxi dial, the unidirectional bezel, exists to be read quickly under pressure. It was designed for function, and function made it beautiful. The fact that it became a fashion watch, a business watch, a watch worn equally in boardrooms and on boats, is a side effect of how completely it solved its original problem. Buy a Submariner because you appreciate what it is, not because you want people to think you know about watches. People who actually know about watches will respect you more for buying an Explorer. The Explorer is the underrated masterpiece of this level. Sized at 36 or 39 millimeters depending on the reference, designed for readability in extreme conditions. No date, no frills, no bezel complication. Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay summited Everest wearing a Rolex prototype that became the Explorer. The watch costs less than a Submariner and is harder to find at retail. That paradox tells you everything you need to know. The best value at level 3 is the Explorer, and the collectors who figured that out a decade ago are not complaining about it. If you are enjoying this breakdown, subscribe. I cover watches and collecting every week. Level 4. The professional tier. Now we enter the territory where the watches have jobs. Real, specific, professional jobs that most wearers will never actually perform. The GMT Master 2 was designed in partnership with Pan American Airways to help pilots track 2 time zones simultaneously. The Milgauss was built for scientists working near electromagnetic fields, with a movement shielded against magnetic interference up to 1,000 Gauss. The Yachtmaster was engineered for offshore racing. These watches solved problems that existed. You are spending $12,000 to $20,000 at retail depending on the reference, and on the secondary market, the numbers get creative. Here is what most people get wrong at level 4. They buy the story. The GMT Master 2 in the Batman configuration, with a black and blue ceramic bezel, became one of the most sought-after Rolexes of the last decade, not because of its GMT function, but because of how it looks on a bracelet. That is completely legitimate. Aesthetics are a valid reason to buy a watch, but you should know that is what you are buying. The function is real. The reason you want it is probably the color. The reference game matters here more than at any other level. The Pepsi GMT, with its red and blue bezel, on a Jubilee bracelet versus an Oyster bracelet. The ceramic version versus the earlier aluminum bezel versions. Each variation carries different secondary market behavior. A 2019 Batman reference and a 2014 Batman reference wear nearly identically and are meaningfully different in price. Learning references before spending at this level is not optional, it is homework. The Milgauss is the level 4 sleeper. Discontinued by Rolex in 2023, which means remaining new old stock is becoming genuinely scarce, and pre-owned prices have started moving accordingly. Level 5. Precious metals. This is where Rolex stops being about function and starts being about material. Every watch from level 1 through 4 exists in stainless steel. Level 5 is where gold enters the conversation. Rolex produces its own gold alloys in-house: yellow gold, white gold, and Everose, their proprietary rose gold made to resist fading over time. An Everose Submariner, a yellow gold date just with a diamond dial. A two-tone GMT on a Jubilee bracelet. You are spending $20,000 to $50,000, and the price is driven more by metal content than by complication. Here is the uncomfortable truth about Level 5. Most people buy gold Rolexes because of what they communicate, not because of what they do differently. The movement inside an Everose submariner is identical to the movement inside a steel submariner. The timekeeping is the same. The water resistance is the same. What you are buying is a different message. That is a completely honest reason to spend the money if the money is available. But you should be clear-eyed about what you are purchasing. Gold Rolex watches have historically held value well, particularly in yellow gold, which has a cultural history in certain communities that keeps demand consistent. Everose tends to trade at a slight premium because of the proprietary alloy. Rolls-Or, in Rolex terminology, combining steel and gold on the same case and bracelet, divides collectors sharply. Some people love two-tone watches for the value proposition, genuine gold at a lower entry point. Others find the combination dated, an aesthetic that peaked in the 80s. The market for two-tone has been quietly strengthening for the last several years. Tastes cycle. The best value at Level 5 is the two-tone date just if you can find the right configuration. Level 6. The day date. This watch deserves its own level. Rolex introduced it in 1956 as the first watch to display both the date and the full day of the week spelled out in a window at 12 o'clock. It was made available exclusively in precious metals from day one. No steel version has ever existed. It was designed for presidents, for leaders, for people who do not need to explain what they are wearing. Eisenhower wore one. Lyndon Johnson had a collection of them. The association was so complete that the industry nickname, the President's Watch, became official terminology for the bracelet style. You are spending $35,000 to over $100,000 depending on metal, dial material, and configuration. Meteorite dials, onyx dials, baguette diamond bezels. The day date in its platinum configuration with an ice blue dial is one of the most beautiful objects Rolex has ever produced. It is also a watch you will almost never see in the wild because the people who can afford them rarely wear them publicly. At Level 6, you are no longer in the watch hobby. You are in a different conversation entirely. The person wearing a platinum day date is not trying to signal watch knowledge. They are signaling something else, and everyone in the room understands what it is. The danger at Level 6 is the dial game. Rolex produces an almost overwhelming number of dial variations for the day date, and not all of them are equally desirable to the secondary market. A standard champagne dial holds value differently than a discontinued exotic. If you are spending at this level for investment purposes, the homework required increases significantly. If you are spending at this level because you love the watch, and the money genuinely does not change your life, buy the dial you love and never think about it again. That is honestly the right answer. Level 7. Vintage and collector grade. We have officially left the watch market and entered the art market. At Level 7, you find references that closed decades ago, dials with patina that took 50 years to develop. Paul Newman, diamonds of particular rarity. Rolex Daytonas with the exotic dials that became the most coveted watches on the planet, not because Rolex marketed them that way, but because collectors decided they were extraordinary and the market followed. A Paul Newman Daytona in stainless steel with a correct dial and original bracelet trades between $100,000 and over $2 million, depending on the specific reference, the provenance, and what happened at the last major auction. The Daytona itself belongs here at its highest level. Eric Clapton's personal Paul Newman reference sold for close to $18 million at auction in 2023. That is not a typo. One watch, worn, used, not new. 18 million. The condition, the story, the specific hands, the specific dial printing. Every detail matters at this level in a way that is completely foreign to any other level on this list. Here is the uncomfortable truth about Level 7. The watches that cost the most are usually the ones that are least accessible as watches. They are too valuable to wear, too rare to insure affordably for daily use, too important historically to risk scratching on a doorframe. The person who owns a reference 6241 Paul Newman is not wearing it to dinner. They are storing it in a climate-controlled environment and making a decision every few years about whether to sell. The watch collecting community has created a genuine alternative asset class, and Level 7 is where that conversation lives entirely. Most of what drives price at Level 7 is not condition alone. It is provenance. It is documentation. It is whether the watch stayed in one family or passed through dealers 10 times. An unpolished case on a watch from 1965 is worth more than a polished case on the same reference because polishing removes original material and with it, proof of authenticity. At this level, wear and age are not flaws. They are credentials. So, where does that leave you? The sweet spot for the serious collector who actually plans to wear and enjoy their watches lies between levels 3 and 5. From the iconic sports references through the precious metal expressions, roughly $8,000 to $40,000. This is where craftsmanship and value are genuinely aligned. Start at level 3 to find which Rolex language speaks to you. Do you want legibility in sport history? That is explorer and submariner territory. Do you want elegance and restraint? The date just will never let you down. Move into level 4 when you have done the reference homework and you understand what you are buying before you buy it. Explore level 5 if the material matters to you and the premium does not sting. Unless you are building a serious investment portfolio, approach level 6 with your eyes open and level 7 as a museum exercise. Read about it. Attend the auctions. Understand why the Paul Newman became the Paul Newman. That education will make you a better buyer at every other level. The best Rolex is the one you actually put on your wrist. The rest is just very expensive furniture in a very green box. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns like this, and I'll see you in the next one.